Boone is back for part two. She is formerly an aerospace engineer, lifestyle entrepreneur, has two master's degrees, two more than I have, in aerospace engineering and spiritual psychology. The latter of those two is super interesting and fascinating to me. That's why we get along so well. One of the many reasons we get along so well. And she's an author of the book. If you guys listen to the first interview that we did together, March 2020 of this year, about a week or two before quarantine started happening nationally, we were actually at that point, you were still debating the exact book title, and we had chatted
Was
about
I?
getting
Oh, I'm
authors
like,
on there and stuff like
oh,
that.
seems like so long ago.
Yeah. But we have settled on the name. I have it here on Amazon. Not your how-to guide to real estate investing. Life lessons on hacking your mind before you hack your wallet. Allie's holding the book up there. And for
I'm like,
here on,
oh,
that must feel good to have it out.
it does. It was a long time coming, and I don't know if you've put a book out lately, but it's hard. Like, so I kind of like pet it, like, I've done a lot of pretty smart things in my life, but putting a book out was hard. It was quite the learning experience, to say the least.
I'm sure. And I love the title, Hacking Your Mind Before You Hack Your Wallet, because on the 80/20 show here, that's what I believe is the ultimate 80/20 hack is like understanding your mind and how it's
Yeah.
programmed, how you can intentionally program it certain ways, just so you can move along life a little flow, a little easier, and at the end of the day, more efficiently, so you can optimize your whole life, which leads to happiness, quality of life, the impact and legacy you leave on others. So a bunch of good positive stuff there. And I'm sure there are people listening to this, including myself, who are aspiring authors or at least have thought of something like valuable lesson wise they've learned in their life that they think they could put into a book form to help other people, because that's just how humans are, whether people realize it or not, a specific person realizes it or not, that at the end of the day most people just kind of want to synthesize lessons that they've learned and use it to
Mm.
help other people. So I definitely want to dig into becoming an author, but maybe before taking a step back and just talking about how you got to where you're at. I think you started, if I'm remembering correctly, you've been in real estate for almost a decade now.
Coming
I
up
think
on it.
2011 investing in it. So would love to hear kind of your whole story and your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, just kind of the short of it is I'm the famous corporate dropout story. I grew up with the famous mindset of go to school, get good grades, get a job, get job security, go to work every day, save till retirement kind of thing. So, I went and got that super secure job and whatever. But the very first day I walked in, I mean, it was a dream job that I had landed. Like, I really landed what everyone, not everyone, people in that industry, they would kill for that job. And so I had the dream job, but, I remember walking into the cubicle for the first time and I was just like, oh no. Like I had just gone through all that school. I was like, this isn't going to work. Like despite how many years I'd been in school and whatever. And so I spent the next handful of years trying to figure out how to get out of corporate because I had a lot of skills, but not really anything like directly, that could make me my own boss type of thing. So I didn't know real estate was going to be a thing. I was looking into real estate. I was looking into businesses, reading every book I could get my hands on. Fast forward, long story short, some real estate investment opportunities came up. And I thought, well, while I still have a corporate paycheck, I might as well start, I'll do something smart with it. I'll do, put it towards something because I'm not going to qualify for loans when I get out of my corporate job. And getting into real estate investing, I started meeting so many really cool people and learning what they were involved with. So that kind of expanded my own portfolio. And then through that, basically everybody was asking me, what are you buying? Like, and so I kind of ended up becoming this like matchmaker referral system type of thing. And it took off so much. I had started writing about it online a little bit. Bigger Pockets picked me up as a writer. And then I was doing it so often and with so many people, I ended up leaving my corporate job to do that full time. And so the specific strategy I had gotten involved with at the time was turnkey rental properties. And for the entire almost decade now, that's what I've been doing. So I was buying them for myself. And ever since then, I also help people, connect them with good turnkey providers, help them through the process, try and teach them, and it's funny because I got my first turnkey 9 years ago. And just this summer, I had a gnarly turnover on one of them. And, there was one component of the whole equation that seems so fundamental, but it boned me. Like it cost me so much money, and it's like, oh, how is it 9 years later I'm still learning, how to make this better? And real estate investing really is an on the job training. Like you're going to be learning, you're going to be failing, you're going to be taking all those lessons learned, hopefully. So it's kind of funny how, I've helped hundreds of people buy turnkeys at this point, and then I was like, oh, I missed that one thing. Cool. And so, really kind of what I do is I just want to, and part of the reason for the book is it's not specific to turnkeys, but really kind of help people, real estate investing is an intimidating industry. You don't know what you don't know. You don't know who to trust. It's like, oh my God, am I getting scammed? Oh wait, I have to put tens of thousands of dollars down on something. What if I lose it all? We didn't learn it in school. So it's kind of like, my whole kind of mission, if you will, is to kind of help kind of give people what would have been helpful for me in the beginning. Like I would have loved for someone to explain to me, okay, here's how this industry works. Here's how you navigate it. Because when you type in how to be a real estate investor in Google, what are you going to find? Like, oh, you should definitely be a wholesaler, and here's how you flip properties. Okay, well, that's going to work for a small majority of the people, but what about everybody else? Or, what about the people who get in having no idea what they do, and then they lose everything, and then they're just completely jaded from what is actually can be a good industry? So, really kind of trying to be the friendly face in an industry that otherwise, people just, it can be a little tricky sometimes. Like it's great once you get your footing, it's great once you get the ball rolling, but, to do that's a little tough. So, that's really kind of where I am now. Fast forward through all the time, I still work with turnkeys, help people with turnkeys all day. I feel like I eat, sleep, and breathe turnkeys. But with the book, I really wanted to expand it bigger into the industry. Like turnkeys are for me, they may not be for you. Maybe you are wholesale, whatever it is. But that was kind of, I like speaking more to like the mindset of it than, that's why it's called Not Your How-To Guide to Real Estate Investing. Because again, when you Google how to be a real estate investor, that's all I feel like anybody actually gives you is like, oh, here's how you flip a property. Well, how do you know if you should be flipping a property? So it's kind of fun. I admit that it's fun to take a break from talking about turnkeys for a second and talk about the bigger picture of the whole thing.
For sure. And I'll have the first interview that Allie and I did March of 2020,
I
which
wonder
is
what I
pretty crazy
said.
to
What do
think
we talk
about.
about?
Talk a little property management, surrender experiment.
Ooh, I
Um,
like it.
yeah, we talked on a good bit of stuff. So I'll link that if you guys want to see more, talk more about like the turnkeys and managing property managers and other things that go in to Allie's job and clients that she works for or works with rather on that. But yeah, the mindset is interesting. The book is definitely like that's almost like a prerequisite curriculum, or that's the syllabus
Yep.
portion of the curriculum before
It's
getting
funny you say
into
that word.
real estate.
I've been calling it the prerequisite to the how-to guides for like
Really?
it's totally a prerequisite. Yeah. And my theory kind of you were speaking to this earlier is my theory is that if you don't have the right mindset, there's not a how-to guide in the world that's going to help you. So it's like, okay, can we pause, read one extra book ahead of time, understand where, how to kind of navigate this and then get into the how-to guides. Like it's not even a big move, but people just dive and I get it. Like if it's like I want to invest and it's like, ooh, I'm gonna flip that property. Here we go flying off into the deep end, and you don't know what you're getting yourself into. So it's like, can we pause, slow down, understand what the heck it is we're doing, and then proceed forward?
Which is an interesting parallel to how this year has been. Just like a
Yeah, tell me
forced
about it.
pause, forced pause for everybody to kind of chill, reflect, see what's going on, see what systems and processes of their life can be tweaked, adjusted, everything like that. So interesting the similarity there. What type of stuff do we cover in the new book?
Oh
Mindset.
boy.
I know it's focused on mindset, but would love to dive a little bit into that. And then
Yes.
I think what will come up is definitely like the challenges in writing it too. So we'll kind of just be going down that path.
Okay. Yeah, it's and it's not even really, I don't necessarily use wording in there saying like here's what your mindset should be or here's how you
Mm-hmm.
tweak your mindset. It's really just putting a lot of information in a book that maybe you haven't thought about. And so it's kind of the things to consider. So like one of the first things I dive into is like let's talk about the real estate investing industry as a whole. Like what are the characteristics of this industry, because it is a very unique industry. Like I can't think of another industry that's even remotely related to it, because it's things like none of us learned this in school. I haven't used a resume for anything in like 9 years. You don't have to have a resume. Quite frankly, you don't have to have any degrees. You don't even have to have graduated high school to be in real estate investing. Um, you can be the biggest jerk off on the planet and probably still succeed. Like you're not. It's not like where you're in corporate and you have to behave and whatever.
Yeah.
It's kind of a free for all. So like, and it's like you are your own boss. That's one of my big points of, it's just you're in charge of what you're doing. And so the reason that I bring a lot of those characteristics of the industry up is so people can gauge, do they want to be involved in this? Because some people just don't. I have a really good friend who me and another, there's three of us, and me and the one of the other guys, we're the like entrepreneur brains, risk takers. We don't want 9 to 5 jobs. We don't want to work for anybody. And we were trying to convince her that she should totally be like that too. And she's like, guys, I actually really enjoy just having a 9 to 5 that I go to and then I go home. Like, and I remember staring at her like, that's a thing, but it is. And so, that's why I kind of really talk about the industry, and I try and make the whole book fun because, like, let's be honest, real estate investing books are so stuffy and boring. So I tried to, make this a little bit more entertaining. But so I talk about the industry a lot, and then I kind of talk about the things like, what things should you be considering? Like a very basic one is like your strengths versus your weaknesses. For example, the reason I don't flip properties is rehabbing and anything involving that, not my strong suit, like at all. And so it's like, what are your strengths and working to those rather than working to your weaknesses? Like everyone's like, oh, I should definitely wholesale. Well, maybe some people should, but should you? Or, the consideration of if you already have a full-time job and a family of 5, like people don't really think very far ahead of like wholesaling's a job. Like you really have
Yeah.
to do you want a third job? So different things to consider for yourself. And then it kind of finishes out with, okay, I secretly do throw a how-to guide in there. What I put in there is the exact 6 steps that I use to get myself out of corporate are
Nice.
exactly 6 steps that you can do to succeed, find your thing in real estate. They're super simple, and really you can kind of use them to accomplish whatever. And then at the very end of the book, I actually interviewed 6 very successful investors who all do different strategies. And, it's kind of like, so what skills do you use on a daily basis that are absolutely critical for your business? Because that's what I feel like a lot of people leave out of, like, here's the how-to guide of flipping a property, but what does that life actually look like? Like, what is the day in the life? What does that involve? What are the actual skills? And it's down to like communication or managing people or whatever it is. So I use the same interview for all the people with the different strategies, so you can kind of get a feel for, what does this strategy look like in the real world? So that was really cool, and I was so appreciative to the investors who contributed to that. And then um, that's kind of about it. I'll tell you my favorite chapter is, and this is kind of a mindset type of thing, is I have a theory that there are actually 3 true currencies.
Love it.
Money, we all know for sure. And then the 2 that people tend to leave out are time and sanity. So like if you want to get something, if you want to buy something, for example, you're going to pay in one or more of those currencies. And for me, like turnkeys, I'm going to pay more dollars for those, but I get to keep my time and sanity. And, some people maybe flipping houses actually brings them joy. So they, it's like, what are you paying in? Because when you think about that in terms of real estate investing, picking your strategy, whatever, and you think about it in life, it can severely change how you do things when you really put into perspective. It's like hiring a maid or a housekeeper. Like, do I want to hire a housekeeper? People are like, oh, I don't really want to spend the money. But if you gauge, does cleaning your house bring you joy? How much time is it going to take you? Versus what you're paying them, what's the value of your time, yada, yada, yada. Like, oh, I should hire a housekeeper.
Yeah.
And so that's actually my favorite chapter of the book. But, that I say that to just kind of give you kind of the tone of the book of like, what are the different things you can be thinking about that maybe you haven't thought about before? And how could that help you figure out where your niche is or what you want to be doing, or, taking your goals into consideration, all that kind of stuff. And there's a couple of things in there. Like I talk about leveraging, like paying cash versus leveraging a property. Like what are the pros and cons of all of that? So it's just really kind of a overview of the industry and for the things that you personally could be considering as you think about investing.
Love it. Absolutely love it. We did talk about the three currencies briefly last time: time, money, sanity. I'm sure Allie would kind of explain it as a former big spreadsheets gal.
I love spreadsheets.
There's probably some type of algorithm you could put in there, which is going to be different
Totally.
for every single person as far as like, does this equate as far as the time it's going to take, the money I would spend, where is it at, how is it going to affect me mentally, sanity wise.
Yeah.
And I think that this is a great book for not only someone, this is what I was just thinking as you're talking, not only someone that's just like thinking about getting into real estate or more so starting real estate investing, but like this type of added perspective or this type of perspective, I think is good to do on a pretty routine basis,
Yeah.
towards the end of the year here. I get really fired up and excited because this is almost the most popular time of the year for people to think about a past period, which is typically the current year that we're in 2020, and start thinking and planning out for 2021.
Yeah.
So this type of stuff, as far as even like deciding to hire a maid, which I've talked about this on multiple episodes, like outsourcing meal prep or cooking,
Yeah.
cleaning, stuff like that, has brought me. It's like so nerdy or silly to some people, but like I love it just because I can clearly see like I'm hiring out something that's less value than than what I value my hourly
Yeah.
worth or value that I bring out. So this
Yeah.
is good. Probably this is that type of stuff, which we call the freedom focuser. I also talk about that in a lot of episodes. Is something that you guys should probably be doing like every quarter, just kind of looking at what's
Hmm.
going on because things are going to change in your life. Like your family dynamic is going
Yeah.
to change, different things. We were talking about before we started going live here that for us, the quarantine hasn't been radically different because we already work from home. I just
Yeah.
have my two roommates here chilling and working as well. But that's really good. That's a really good, if there's one takeaway as far as like taking an action to consider into your December projects here, you guys are going to hear this like Christmas week, most likely. Um, think about the different things you're doing both in business and life and how you're paying for them with a blend of those three currencies with time, money, sanity.
Yeah.
It's not going to be the same plug and play if it was. We could have a how-to guide on how to live life, how to invest in real
Yep.
estate, but every single person is wired completely different, which
Very
is
different.
interesting. Yeah,
That's
which
what
is
I
interesting.
was I was talking to someone yesterday. I don't remember, and we were talking about how like it's so crazy to me that so many people online, like if you go on the online forums or bigger pockets or whatever, there's so many people telling you what strategy you should do. And it's like, how would you know? Like, yes, flipping works phenomenal for a lot of people. Wholesaling works phenomenal for a lot of people. Turnkeys work phenomenal but it's like, what about you in particular? Like everyone's situation is different. Everyone's skill set is different. And so that's, why, it makes me passionate even thinking about it. That's why I wanted to put in the book of like, I want people to think for themselves because we didn't learn this stuff in school, we don't know who to listen to, so we assume we should be listening to everyone trying to tell us what we should be doing or how to do it and all that kind of stuff. And there's such a big importance on really standing on your own ground. But
Mm-hmm.
if you don't know what you don't know, how do you do that? And that's kind of that exploration. But yeah, everyone is wired completely different. And you were talking about it's not just for new investors. Like I have a really good friend who is a retired, super successful house flipper. Like she was in real estate for the longest time, and she read the book and she was really appreciative. She even said, she's like, man, if I had thought of some of this stuff before, like I could have done some things so much more efficiently. And it's like, if one thing in the book changes how you do what you're currently doing, like if you're already in some real estate investing strategy, tweaking it just a tad can change everything, your success levels, your efficiency, your happiness, everything. And so that's the stuff that gets me all jived up. I'm like, woo, let's talk about it. I love that. Like, and yeah, I love what you say is like, it's the constant tuning because it's like, okay, we learn all these concepts. Like, okay, how could I tweak everything now? Well, 6 months from now, your situation might be different, or your goal may have switched a little bit, or something. And constantly going back and kind of reevaluate. There's so many books that I've read that I love. Like the first one that comes to mind is the E Myth Revisited. Every time I read a book a second time, all new things come to me because I'm at a different place in life. So yeah, it's a constant fine tuning for sure.
Love that. And I remember we said that we were talking about that on the first interview, which is still so true. And ironically, it's like we're almost doing it right now that it's like you never read the same book twice or watch the same
Yeah,
movie twice just because like even stuff I've watched during like quarantine time since like March. I feel like I've like rewatched movies. Definitely have
yeah,
reread books or like I love rereading through highlights of my books just to, like kind of get it fresh in my operating system. And behavior and stuff. And it definitely hits you different. Every single time it hits you different, or you pick out something different, or something speaks to you that you're
Yeah.
able to apply more at that time than previous times or any times in the
Yeah.
future.
I'm so excited to get back to reading books. I love reading books, and this year I was so busy with mine. I read the stupid book. I don't know because I was, editing and like typos. I got to the point where like if I even saw paragraphs of text, I was like, "Oh, ow." I was like, "Oh my God, I can't read another book right now." And, like I have missed it. So I'm excited to do. I love that. Like, and people borrow books and Kindle and all that kind of stuff. I have a hard copy or a paperback copy of every single book I've ever read, and it's on my shelf. Because it's like that's my education. You said I have two master's degrees, but honestly, I've learned more. I had to teach myself business because the degrees I have and the schooling I did, none of them taught me real estate or business or entrepreneurship or any of that kind of stuff. So I had to, I would almost consider myself having a third master's because I had to get myself an MBA, like certified from me. Um, but like I go back and I read those books over and over. That's why I like having an actual copy of them because I can pull it back off my shelf if it kind of jumps out at me. I'm like, I think it's time to reread this one. So yeah, I tote a lot of heavy books around.
Love that. Anything that's coming to mind that you read this year that has really given you some good perspective or insight or anything?
I've only read my book this year.
Only read your
And
book. Love
I mean,
that.
that's given me some good perspective. But I was so busy with it, and then, like I said, made my eyes cross having to read again. And then actually, the book I started reading after that I'm in the middle of and going very slowly through, is called Your First Thousand Copies by Tim Grahl, and it's how to put a book out.
Nice.
And so, like, or like, how to sell copies of it and whatever. But it's funny because this year I was expecting, my quarantine project was getting the book out, and I was like, oh, well, I'll spend the rest of the year, especially once we kind of figured out that COVID was going to be lingering around for a while. I was like, I'm going to figure out how to get that book out. But I've been so busy with real estate unexpectedly this year. I haven't even, that's why I've been going so slow through how to put a book out because I don't know how your real estate stuff has been going this year, but I have been swamped. Like, who would have guessed that coming out of the pandemic
Yeah.
or during the pandemic? I guess we're not coming out of it, I guess, for a
Yeah.
while.
Well, hopefully here soon.
Yeah, right.
Um, but yeah, life is funny like that. One thing I heard on another interview actually where you were talking about the book is an interesting paradox, which one thing I talk about. I think life is kind of like life is full of paradoxes, and kind of like one of the purposes of life is taking the best aspects of both ends of a paradox.
Hmm.
So one of those with you that I'm seeing with writing the book is that a lot of what goes into writing the book for you, and I heard this like I mentioned on another podcast that you did recently, is some of the systems and processes involved in doing that are not something that you're good at. But it was good for you. So like this is the paradox is that we were just
Yeah.
talking about, what I get really fired up at where I find like more efficiencies and saving time, energy, it's time, sanity, energy, everything like that, money. But the paradox that I see is that you talked about the importance of doing some of the systems and processes that you're not good at,
Yeah.
but you also talk big about, and in our last interview, which I'm fully in agreement with, is you should be doubling down like on your strengths and trying to
Yep.
outsource what you don't do. Can you speak to that a little bit as far as your
Yeah.
process in writing the book, and then also just real estate operators listening to this, how they can incorporate that into their life
Yeah.
and business as well?
It's so well, I'm like, oh, he listened to me on another podcast. But I love that you picked up on that because when I was talking about doing the book, and this was actually in my head as I was trying to figure out how to put the book out, is I am the biggest advocate. You'll figure it out from the book if you've ever heard me talk before. I'm a huge advocate of outsourcing, of working to your strengths, outsource your weaknesses. Like, how do you make everything most efficient? Because chances are, if I'm working to one of my weaknesses and trying to do that, I'm probably losing time, sanity, probably money because I'm making so many mistakes. Like, I one of the examples I use in the book is like cooking. I hate cooking and I'm not good at it. And people all the time they're like, "Well, you can learn to cook, right?" And I'm like, I mean, I could, but like I don't like it. I don't want to. Like I get Hello Fresh. It's like cooking for dummies. It's like pour in the oil. I'm like, okay, so like, so it's funny that for the book process, I went completely against what I normally talk about. So, and I actually didn't plan to do it that way. So kind of where I am at in my business, because I've had my business for so long, is when I first started my business, I was doing everything myself. But very quickly, I started strategically outsourcing. Like, what things could someone else do that are taking up my time, preventing me from doing other things? So I've got this whole outsourcing structure. I love my employees. Everybody's working to their strengths, which means we're all freaking happy. And, the quality of my business is tenfold better than if I were trying to do all those things that I'm not good at and I don't understand. So, when the book situation came out, I actually only ended up, so I had started probably like 5 different books. And the reason I never went through with it is because I knew that as soon as I finished writing it, which that part I love doing, I love writing, love getting my ideas on paper, love that. But I knew then I was going to have to figure out how to publish a book. And I was like, oh, sounds terrible. Plus, I don't have the first clue. And someone introduced me to a company who helps you self publish. Like basically, they do the editing, the book cover, the whole, it's like a one and done type of thing. So you pay the money. So this kind of goes back to those 3 currencies. It's like, yeah, I could figure this all out on my own, but I'm probably going to lose time, sanity, probably money, or I could pay a good bit of money and have all of that taken care of for me. So I was like, oh my God, I can finally write the book. I have a way to get it out once I do it. So it motivated me. I wrote the book, started this company, ended up not really working out with the company, not because there's anything wrong with them, but we just weren't seeing eye to eye. Like it just didn't feel right, kind of thing. So I quit with them, and then I was like, oh great, now I have this book. How do I get it out? And so I was kind of on the fence about, I would love to hire someone to just do this for me. But the problem was, and this comes up with what I found in like marketing, social media marketing, basically, if you ask someone, how do I put a book out? They're going to tell you, and they may not have no idea what they're talking about. It's like, how do you find the person who actually knows what they're doing? Here's an example. So I'm Googling, like, how to put the book out, how do I get reviews for the book or whatever. And this one lead magnet came up from some random guy, and it said how to maximize the number of reviews you get on your book or something like that. So it was a free download. I was like, I need that. So I read this whole document. It all sounds legit. And something prompted me to think, wait a minute, let me go see how many reviews this guy has. Because if he's sitting here telling me, here's how you get like tens of thousands of book reviews, I want to make sure he has tens of thousands of book reviews. Because if he does, I'm 100% taking his advice. I go to his book on Amazon, and it had 15 reviews. And I was like, okay, so that's what I kept bumping up against. And then I think it was kind of divine, the quarantine gates hit. And it's like, okay, here's the deal. I could keep trying to find the person to help me get this book out. I'm going to, I'd already lost money working with this one company. I'd already spent a lot of money making all these mistakes. It's like, do I want to spend more money as kind of a trial? Because I don't know who actually knows what they're talking about. And I thought to myself, I was like, you know what? I spend so much time outsourcing and everything else is going really well. I need to figure this out on my own. And it was kind of like, because I would love to keep writing books. And by me going through the process myself this time, now I know what I'm looking for. Now it's kind of, it's like with turnkeys, you buy one and it's the same process after that. I feel like if I put a second book out, it'll be nearly brainless because now I understand what needs to happen and what kind of order. I just didn't know what that was before. And so it was a little bit of a, personal challenge kind of thing, but also to help I guess I could leave it at personal challenge. It definitely goes against everything I talk about. And I think as a regular and as a whole, you should not do, if you're doing that for your entire career, probably not very efficient. But I was in quarantine, my career was already going. I just heard a really loud school bell. I live in the middle of Venice Beach. I'm like, am I in elementary school again? What just happened? I'm like, what is going on outside? But I think the important clarification is, and I've said this before too, like I always say, like flipping should not be my primary strategy. That does not mean, however, at some point, if I'm feeling a little adventurous, if everything else is kind of taken care of, why not do a trial flip? Do it as a side project, do it as a fun thing, because it never hurts to learn more stuff. It never hurts to get out of your comfort zone. It's just a question of, are you banking on your whole career going outside your comfort zone? Like, so it's kind of a balance of like, do everything, work to your strengths, outsource as appropriate, get all of that going. And when you have some time or money or sanity to potentially sacrifice, try something new because you never know, heck, maybe my next career is a professional book publisher. I don't know. It's not. Um, but, you do have to branch out. So that's kind of the clarification of absolutely branch out, try new things, challenge yourself, do something that you do find challenging. Maybe if I go take a cooking course, who knows what'll happen. So it's not to say never do those things, but don't make it your entire career type of thing. So like
Mhm.
if you get into real estate, like if a flip would be a fun kind of side project, challenging project for me as a fun thing, that is very different than trying to make a career as a flipper. So
Mhm.
that's kind of that distinction. And, I think if this year had been a normal year and I was doing all my normal stuff, I may have just kept trying to outsource it, but quarantine. And honestly, it got to the point where I was spending so much time trying to figure out who I should be listening to as far as how to put a book out. I was like, I could just be figuring this out on my own,
Yeah.
and plus this was my first book. It was kind of my baby. Like I wanted to be a little bit of a control freak over it.
Love that. That's a great breakdown on that paradox there as far as like outsourcing what doesn't give you sanity slash energy, time, money, benefits, and versus actually doing it yourself, where it's kind of like, and this is the similarity with a lot of listeners for the 80/20 show, where it's like a lot of people, a lot of investors that we talk to are just doing direct to seller marketing. So a lot of this stuff, a lot of the parallels here is like if they're trying a new marketing channel, like text message marketing or direct mail or cold calling, and it's like they want to have that outsourced, but there is definitely a benefit of going
Yeah.
through that process a little bit like yourself, figuring out like how you want to be speaking to sellers slash homeowners and things
Yeah.
like that before plugging someone in there. And it definitely is that balance that you broke down pretty good
Yeah.
perspective wise for you as far as running the turnkey operation and coming out with the book.
Yeah. And I think there's actually it's a little hard to distinguish when you should do what version because I always think because I work with turnkeys and so all the properties are managed by property managers and I hear so many people say, well, I should landlord a property before I get a property manager so I know what the property manager should be doing. And I've always been pretty avidly against that. Actually, I think I talk about that in the book. But if you think about it, the skill set required for a landlord is very different than the skill set required to manage a property manager. Like if I have a property manager on my property, I don't need to know how to fix toilets. I don't need to know how to screen tenants. I don't need to know how to do any of those things. I need to know how to manage people because those people are doing those things. Where if I'm the landlord, I don't think there's a lot of benefit in learning to fix toilets because how is that going to help you better manage a property manager later? I mean,
Mhm.
it's, as the manager in that, it's like the manager of the manager in that case, it's like learning how to ensure the toilet got fixed. Not, you don't care how it got done. I just want to make sure it's fixed kind of thing. But then when I think about the first year of my business, I did everything myself. The website, which I wish I had taken screenshots, it would have been laughable. The website, I was emailing everybody, every single part of my business I was doing, but it was very quickly inefficient. And so it's like, I don't need to know the technical ins and outs of the website, but in that case, it was a really good experience for me to try to, try it. And it's kind of like, so in some cases, yeah, try it and then maybe, gauge when you should outsource it if appropriate. Other cases, like the landlord property manager thing, it's like, dude, don't waste your time. Like just learn how to manage a property manager kind of thing. So I don't even really know the answer of when that is, when that difference is necessarily. But I think everyone, if you take the time to kind of think of like, is there benefit in me doing it myself first or not? And if you can really think about that, it'll kind of lay itself out.
That's the key, kind of taking some time to really think. And some of it's going to be like feeling, intuition, again,
Yeah.
depending on how you're wired. And like, what's the is it 16 personality types? Like if you're more like emotion based or like
Yeah.
information based as far as making decisions, things like that. That's definitely a good breakdown. It's funny how we're talking about everybody's different. Me and Allie are definitely different in the sense of like even like cooking. That's one thing I look at the efficiencies on. not to, toot my own horn, but just from more so experience and more so because I love food. I've done
Yeah.
a lot of time, pretty much like cooking for over a decade, really.
I'm coming to
My
your
own stuff.
house when COVID's
Yeah.
over
Hey, come on
because
over. Go
I
get
love
some
food
turkeys.
too, just when someone else cooks it.
Exactly. Well, that's part of the reason why it gives me energy too. It's like
Yeah.
I like to cook for myself, not only knowing like I have my nutritional plan in place, it's going to taste good, everything like that. But for me, that's an energy because like cooking for other people is just like one of the creative ways that you can show like appreciation and love and stuff like that. So that's why I've always been big
Boy,
into
I
cooking
hope I
throughout
meet
my.
more people like you. I love eating other people's food.
Yeah.
And
No,
you know
I mean
that
I do too.
it's such a good clarification because I love cooking as an example because you're right. Cooking brings a lot of people a lot of joy. And
Hmm.
I just happen to not be one of those people. So when people are like, "Well, you could learn how to cook." I'm like, "Okay, so it brings you joy. That doesn't mean it brings me like it's
Hmm.
not even doesn't bring me joy. It brings me misery." Like,
Wow.
and so that is so important no matter what you're doing, whether it's investing, starting a business, just living life, whatever, is being true and honest about what works for you. I'm sure I said it in the other one, I talk about it all the time. I love sleeping in.
Hmm.
Period. Like I like to wake up when my body wants to wake up. And people can frown on that all day long, like, oh my God, lazy. None of the Shark Tank investors sleep in every day. God forbid. But it's just true. It brings me so much joy to know that I just get to wake up when I want to wake up. And I have to be honest about that because sometimes it's hard to be because everyone's like, oh my God. But the more honest you can be about the things that bring you joy, about what it is you really want, and what kind of life you're actually wanting, sky's the limit. We come from a society where everyone is so busy telling everybody else what they should be doing, shouldn't be doing. Oh my God, like judging us for it, like whatever. But can you imagine a world, not to get all woo woo about it, but like, can you imagine a world where everyone's just working to their strengths and doing the things that bring them joy? Hello. Like,
I think that's what
I
we're
don't
gradually
want to go as
moving more
far
and
as
more
world
towards.
peace, but sure seems like it.
Yeah, I mean I think that's like human evolution is like we're gradually, slowly moving more and more towards that for sure.
Yeah, I think so.
And that plays, I mean, and that is a good point of just kind of like knowing yourself. Another difference, like I know that you hate to work off a schedule and you're more nocturnal. I think I could be nocturnal, but I don't know for some reason. I think it's kind of one end or the other, where it's either like you like to wake up really early, and those like 4 or 5, 6 o'clock a.m. hours are like kind of like your focus, and you kind of get momentum and energy, kind of knowing that you're awake and doing productive stuff before most of the world is awake, or
Yeah, I
the
don't get that.
opposite where you stay up, or the opposite where you stay up like late. So next month, again, like a psychological public accountability start slash I just decided on it this week after another interview and being just fascinated by it the last few months since I heard about it. And I didn't tell you this before we went on air, but I'm doing the 75 hard challenge starting in January. I
Ooh.
don't know if you've heard of that or not.
Uh-uh.
So it's pretty much like it's 100% a mindset challenge, and pretty much you
Ooh, I
have to
love it.
do 75 days straight of 5 things. So you take a progress picture, like a progress picture in the mirror, drink a gallon of water. You do 2 workouts that are 45 minutes each, and one of them has to be outdoors. And it doesn't like that could include like walking.
Every day for 75 days, 2 workouts.
75 days straight. Yeah.
So 90 minutes of working out for 75 days in a row.
Yep.
Wow.
No alcohol, and you stick to a nutritional plan with no cheat meals.
Nice.
If you mess up on any of those 5 things throughout the challenge, then you start again at day 0.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm looking forward to doing that. In the episode that just got released before this, I'm interviewing a longtime Investor Fuse guy, Greg Simpson. Awesome guy and really big investor out of Tampa Bay area. He just finished his either like a month or two ago, and he's doing it again with added stuff to it, which is called the phase one. He's starting January 4th too. So that's one thing that I guess I'm just kind of bringing up because that plays into the whole mental side. And what I'm exploring with that, or I'm intending to explore with that, is like it's gonna really, really force me to prioritize planning. And like
Yeah.
I don't have a decision. Like so many times, just how your brain is wired, and this is applicable for everything. I know I talk in a lot of generalities. That's where generalizations, but it's gonna like force you to do something. So if I haven't done my second workout of the day and it's 5 or 6 o'clock, I don't have time to like mentally dilly dally and be like, well, you know what, I'm gonna check an email, or you know what, I'm gonna do this. It's like
Yeah.
you literally have to be so disciplined and strict. And I think the goal with that is just building up compounded like supreme confidence. Because if you're able to do that for 75 days, like your confidence as far as like what you can accomplish, what you can attain is like through the roof. And our business coach is big on that. And that's one point I want to talk about actually too. From him, he recommended a book. Just talk about good book recommendations. It's called The Big Leap. I don't know if you've read that.
No.
So I listened through it on Audible, and I'm reading through it and like taking notes and doing the exercises in the physical copy. But it's essentially around the principle of everybody has these upper limiting beliefs. And I think this is applicable to a lot of people listening or watching this show, because who the book is pretty much aimed for is people that have a certain level of success, like living in a zone of success where they have good careers, making money, quote unquote, certain levels of happiness, stuff like that. But they're not fully in their zone of genius, like at all times, which is something that like Allie and I have indirectly been talking about like throughout this episode, and what brings her happiness, being an author and stuff like that. And one chapter that's in there, or part of a chapter that's in there, is the premise. I believe he calls it Einstein time. And this was huge for me reading this. It was either last weekend or the weekend before. But this is huge for a lot of what Ali and I are talking about, where you kind of like take self-responsibility for time, and you pretty much just instill in yourself the belief that, you tell yourself, like, I am the source of time, I am the creator of time. Because if you eliminate the vocabulary of like, you know what, I didn't have time to edit this podcast and get it out last week. You had the time, it's just other stuff took priority to do it.
For sure.
He kind of expands on that, and it's more profound than me just kind of thinking off the top of my head. But that was something I have on my bedroom whiteboard as a quote, is that Einstein time. And that's something that's very applicable, that you guys can use as well, as far as any asset of life or business that you guys have going on.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And I think all the time, I was just thinking about this the other day, for some reason, I wish I was a schedule person. Like I may have said it on the other episode, but I had a business mentor one time who actually showed me his breakdown of a schedule every day of the week. I mean, down to the like half hour, like he wakes up at certain time, hour and a half to da 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 da. And like it was broken, and it was in a spreadsheet. I was like, I even love making spreadsheets. Like it'd be so great to create my week like that. I cannot imagine how much I would get done, but I'm one of those people, like, if I make a schedule, I'm just not a schedule person. Like people are like, what's a day in the life of Allie look like? I'm like, there's literally no 2 days. I'm such a go with the flow. Like I'm kind of one of those, like I don't create my own drive. Like I either have it or I don't. I kind of just go with, before we actually recorded this, I was watching an episode of my soap opera with my coffee, and I was like, and I was just feeling kind of groggy for some reason. And so, I follow whatever, but, I'm just not a schedule person. But God, I wish I was a schedule person, and I wish I was a morning person. I can't imagine what all I would get done. But exactly what you're saying is, like, it's not that I didn't have time. It's that time was allocated somewhere else, watching my soap opera, or, you know, being brainless for a minute, or checking Instagram, or whatever it is. And, to really finesse that, we actually do have enough time to do whatever we want to do. It's just, how do you properly allocate that?
Yeah, and it's kind of like it's definitely like a belief I think a lot of people have, is like it's almost rewarded to be like short on time or busy, or
Oh
I
yeah,
forget
to be
what's
totally
the
stressed and crunched. Like, oh, you're so successful, you're so stressed out. Yay.
yeah, I forget the term. It's a psychology term, but it's like if you have something due Friday, it's like your brain almost like allocates, like it's gonna take you up to Friday to do it, just because that's when it's due. I forget that term, but I feel like that's how a lot of people are kind of wired to do that in whatever, projects or tasks, activities they have to knock out
Yeah.
in life and business there.
Well, and here's a complete counter to this whole theory. So that's like one end of the spectrum. Get more done, accomplish your dreams, everything you're trying to do. I always think about, like, when I watch Shark Tank, when Shark Tank first started, and all the big and entrepreneur, Mark Cuban, all those guys are talking. They all work like 17-hour days for 10 years to even start their, get their start or whatever. And in the very beginning of my career as a business owner, I was like, and I've had so many days where I work 17 hours. I get excited about something, and I'm like, da, 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 there's steam coming off the keyboard. But like I said, I woke up and watched, well, okay, 1.5 episodes of my soap opera with my coffee today. And, one thing I've learned through this whole journey is, so many people are preaching, like, be efficient, work your 17-hour days, do all these things. we also only live once. And you know what? So sleeping in and then waking up slowly with my coffee and my soap opera brings me a lot of joy. And so I might not get to a Mark Cuban level. Maybe I do, maybe I don't. I don't know. But I'm also really freaking happy too. And so it's also kind of like all of those things are fantastic, and for sure anyone driven towards it and everyone, like do what you can, but in that don't forget that that's not all there is either. Like I think there's so much. What I love about the program you're going to do is it's not even just about business. Like I remember terrible timing. In January, I had a friend who did a 10-day like detox program kind of thing. And I was like, that sounds really good. Had I known quarantine was coming, I would have waited until March because I didn't have anywhere to be anyways. Because, during my 10 days, I couldn't go to the gym, couldn't go out to eat with friends. I wish I'd waited till the end of March for that. But it was it was 10 days, and I'm not one to hold myself. I don't have a lot of self-discipline, quite honestly, but I did this kind of like putting the book out. I was like, this was a personal challenge. And at the end of that 10 days, I thought I was just doing it for physical cleansing, like clean me out, everything. My energy levels and my happiness levels, everything was through the roof by the end of it. And I don't know if it was because I got, bad foods out of my system or because I had just accomplished this personal challenge that I kind of didn't think I was going to do. It all goes hand in hand. And what I love about your program is it's hitting mind, body, physical, mental, everything. And, it's like one thing to get really efficient with your business and everything you're doing. It's also another thing to get really efficient with that mindset. Coming full circle back to what we've been talking about is if you are just really stinking happy, nothing else really matters, in my opinion. Like, I mean, hell, if you think about everything we care about, health of ourselves, health of our family, our jobs, pursuing our dreams, all of that ties back to happiness. So, it's like I love the whole spectrum of this because it's like on one hand, we can accomplish anything we want to accomplish, a lot of the ways you're talking about. On the other hand, you know what? Go watch an episode of your soap opera. It's cool. Like it's just I love that stuff. Like, ooh, how can I make my life like how do I balance being a successful entrepreneur and investor and watching my soap opera? For me, it works out kind of good because I'm a night owl, so I'll work at midnight and make up for it. So it'll be fine.
Part of being a lifestyle design expert is just like
Yeah.
first knowing what you want, trial and error. Life is just
Mm-hmm.
a big experiment on yourself, just trying different stuff out, seeing what works, what you get happiness from, what can help other people, everything like that.
Yeah, I love that word too, because like if I find something challenging or if I want to do something that's kind of more fearful, I set it up in my mind like an experiment. Like, well, you know what? Let's try it for 90 days. And at the end of it, if it doesn't work, cool, we'll quit. Set it up as a trial. And something about that makes my brain be like, okay, versus like, hey, we're going to do this. Ack. It's this whole response of like, hey, it's not a set thing. Let's just try it for, you know, cool. And it's like, oh, sweet. I've done a lot. I mean, I've done that trick on myself a lot.
Love that. Big fan of that. Tell me what you think, because we got a lot of real estate investors listening to this, obviously, but end of the year here, what do you think is your best insight, advice, best tips on what to focus on for 2021? Obviously, they could get your book, leave a review would be amazing, guys. If you could do that for Allie and I, Turnkey is obviously your asset class that you're focused on. But in addition to reflecting, finding out what makes you happy, taking control of designing your life, no matter if you're more of a calendar guy and enjoy cooking like me, or if you're more shoot from the hip like Allie, what would you recommend for
Be
going
like Carlos, it's
2021?
more efficient.
Yeah.
I would say it's such an interesting year to ask that question because I feel like my answer to that would have been so generic any other year. But I think 2020 is it's holy cow. Like, I think it's one of those years where everything we thought we knew, maybe we don't. Things like job security, for example. I can think of so many businesses that I would have considered they'd never go out. Like, like, why would that kind of business not thrive? Well, guess what happened with the pandemic? So many businesses that you never would think would not be utilized. What I mean, nightclubs, for example, or
Yeah.
bars. Like bars will always exist, no matter what technology or whatever, because people want to go to bars. Well, guess what? 2020 has not had, at least in California. I'm in California, so my lockdowns are a little stricter. But um, I think there's things like nest eggs, like that. I mean, I think probably everyone knows that they should have a savings account, but guess what? In case that you never really needed it before, you might have needed it this year.
Mhm.
Um, it's like, I know for me, one of the biggest things this year is what I've seen with myself and seen with other people is it's almost like well, and I'm not going to speak for everyone, but everyone I know, including myself, it's like the thing that brings me the most joy, like the line to my soul. I probably talked in the last episode. In my case, it's working in the prisons. Well, guess what I haven't been able to do for 2020?
Yeah.
And so many people, everyone I know has lost the ability to do the thing that's like the line to their soul. And so it's like, looking back on 2020, it's like, oh my God. Like, okay, first of all, none of us are safe as far as like health, all of that kind of stuff. So many people I know have lost someone incredibly close to them because of COVID. Um, it's kind of, I've been saying like 2020 has taken no prisoners. And so I think it's such an important year to look back and go through the whole year and be like, okay, what didn't work? I didn't have the savings account that I needed to. My business is not nearly as secure as I thought it was. Did I need to get creative? If I started working from home, was I with my family the whole time? Like everything changed for just about everybody this year. And I think it's so important to look at that and see how going forward, how can I incorporate those lessons or the things that I learned through all of that into future stuff. Maybe some things are more important to you now. Maybe you realize you no longer take for granted things that you had that you don't have right now. Health. It's kind of, I was, well, not laughing because it wasn't funny at all when the pandemic first hit and everyone's like, make sure and take your vitamin C. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure immunity is one of those things. It's like, oh wait, let me take it on Saturday so I don't get it on Monday.
Yeah.
You kind of have to build up to that, like, you know, um, God, just so many things happened this year that no one would have expected. Like I think of all the businesses that are not making it.
Yeah.
And it's just, I think it's like when you have a big failure, you've got to take the lessons learned, go back through 2020 and really soul search and analyze the whole thing for yourself. It's different for all of us. Like, what I remember one of the things for me is when the quarantine gates hit like very first time and I literally couldn't like leave the house. I don't even think I went to a grocery store for a couple weeks or something. No gym, no like anything. All I could do was leave the house to walk the dogs. There was like a couple days where I was kind of like, oh God, what's happening? But after that, my energy levels and my productivity shot through the roof, even without an email schedule, like calendar. Um, and I was like, so I mean, I was plugging away at the book and I was like, oh my God, I haven't been this productive in forever. And I was like, okay, pause. I need to figure out what exactly about right now is creating this because when the world opens back up, which I thought at that time would be a couple weeks later, we're
Yeah.
now, what, 8 months in? I'm like, okay, but what about quarantine gave me all of that energy because I want to be able to replicate that when the world's still open. And so it's kind of stuff like that of, how can we prevent hardships that we maybe experience this year for the first time? How can we replicate things? How can we get rid of things? How like clean everything up because everything I think we thought we knew is not necessarily true anymore. I mean, that's been the big thing I've taken from this year is like again, it's taken no prisoners. Like
Yeah.
everything's up for change. And I think a lot of us were really secure in what we had before. And, how do we adjust? And I think about, I mean, not to pitch for real estate investing, but like, the economy is in question right now. We're even in a coin shortage. We can't even find our coins. And so, like my dad keeps bringing up, like, what's going to happen to the dollar? And so it's got me thinking about an investing perspective is, in a worldwide pandemic, who could have guessed this was ever going to happen? And like, everything's in question. But one thing I know for sure that will never change is people will always need somewhere to live. And so, from an investing perspective, that motivates me to buy more real estate. I don't know what's going to happen with the dollar. I don't know what's going to happen with gold. I don't know what's going to happen with the stock market, but I do know one thing. people always are going to have to live somewhere, period. And interest rates are rock bottom right now. So it's like, oh, and properties now are flying off the shelves. Who would have guessed that? So, again, taking the whole year and really allowing yourself to use that to maybe change some perspectives that you had in the past that maybe are no longer true.
Love that. I hope you guys listening have heard this with an open mind and added some very positive perspectives from Allie, as people that hear her on podcasts or listen or read her stuff typically do. What's the best place to connect with you as far as following you, maybe looking at turnkey investments, things like that, and the book, of course?
So I actually set up a link just for your folks. So the last episode, I set up a link and offered everyone a free copy of my Turnkeys 101 ebook. So this time around, I thought I'd shake it up a little bit. And if you go to hipsterinvestments.com slash, what did I make it? Time freedom free book. Is that what I made it?
Love that.
Yep, hipsterinvestments.com slash time freedom free book. I have a free digital copy of the new book that we've been talking about on there. There's also a link if you're a nerd like me and want paperback. There's a link to the Amazon page for the book if you want to get it. And the only thing I ask in return, I would love if you leave a review for it. If you get it, please leave a review. I'm a brand new author. Trying every review counts at this stage. And if you like the book, pass it on to your friends and family. I'd love to get all of this out, the messages out and everything. So yeah. And then on that page too, there's information on how to connect with me.
Love it. Allie, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for having me back. That's always the most flattering thing is like, oh boy, he'll have me back.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. My pleasure. But yeah, appreciate you the way you choose to live your life, being definitely a beacon of positivity and possibility for other people as far as lifestyle design, and at the end of the day, what's the only thing that matters is just living an optimized, happy life, however that is. If you want to have a coffee and watch soap operas or
I should make my motto, you can sleep in too.
Yeah. Yeah.
My motto
coffee,
going forward.
Coffee and soap operas like Allie or me and all times coffee and going to play pick up basketball in the morning before work. One and the same. Just trying to live our best lives. So thank you guys. You guys are probably listening to this Christmas week or New Year's week. So have an amazing holiday weekend and New Year's. We'll catch you in the new year. We'll probably every episode I'll be talking about where I'm at with 75 hard because I'm extremely excited for that. So talk to you guys soon. Thanks so much for checking out the episode.